Good evening, everyone. Today's session is on looping in C programming. There are different loops that we use in C programming. Let us see one by one how we use them and what is the objective, what is the concept behind looping, right? So let us start with the session. Here we have, like, first of all, we will be going through what is looping. So looping is an iterative process, or you may say when you want to repeat the same line of code, or you may say the same line, the same statements multiple times. So then you will be using a concept that is looping, right? It is also known as iteration. Like sometimes in some books it is written iteration, in some books it is written loops, or in some books it is written looping. So all have the same meaning, like you want to repeat the statements multiple number of times, right? So here we will be discussing about three types of loops in C language. Let us see. The first thing is, before going into the detail, the first part is why looping is required. Why looping is required. Looping simplifies the complex problems into easy ones. So when you have, like, when you have to solve your problem and make it like, or decompose your problem, you might be using looping. It enables to alter the flow of the program, so that instead of writing the same code again and again, no need to write the code again and again. Like suppose I want this print statement to be printed number multiple times. So rather than writing it again and again, I will be putting this statement within the looping part, right? And then this statement would be executed multiple number of times. Right. So, for example, you are taking, like, if we need to print University of Calcutta 10 times. So here, instead of writing the printf statement 10 times, you would be take single printf statement and use the loop for that and put the condition for 10 times. Right. Now, these are some advantages of loops, like rather than increasing the lines of codes or statements, and it is basically the when you have the same code to be reused. So here the first advantage would be it provides code reusability. Using loops, we do not need to write the same code again and again. And the third thing is, using loops, we can traverse over the elements of data structure. So like when we have arrays or when we have linked list, so we have defined some array, and if we want to traverse the data elements in the array, then we must be traversing like one element, then second element, then third element of the array. So here the looping concept, the for loops, are widely used here for traversing in an array. Now let us understand what are the types of C loops we have. There are three types of loops and they are very important. They are basically segregated into two parts, like two types. The first part is, some of the loops falls in this category, that is pre-test loop, and some of the loops falls in the second category, that is post-test loops. So if the condition is tested first and then the number of statements is going to be executed, then we will be using the pre-test loops. And whereas when we have post-test loops, that means at least once this line of code will be executed and then it checks the conditions, right? So let us move to the next part, essential components of a loop. The first part is basically these are the requirements, you may say, or these are actually required when you use the looping concept, right? The first is the counter, from where you are going to start, right? Second is initialization of that particular counter. Like suppose I want my counter to be start from 0, and it is going to execute for 10 times. So I will be initializing this counter with 0, and my condition would be this loop is going to be executed for 10 times, right? So first is your counter, second is initialization of the counter with some initial value, and then condition to check with the optimum value of the counter. So here if you are checking the conditions like my condition is true till this part, right? Suppose 10 times or number of times. So condition is also a very important concept when we use the looping. Then we have number of statements to be executed by the iteration. Like suppose I want my loop to be start from 0 to 10, and within this there are number of statements, the logic under this that needs to be executed 10 times. Statements to be executed by iteration, and then we have is increment and decrement. So let us have a first part in looping concept, that is while loop, right? So again there would be this is a pre-test loop, right? It would be like telling you how to execute the statement number of times. There would be some certain syntax, but the motive of every loop is same, a pre-tested loop. Basically it is used to repeat the same block of statements number of times according to the condition that is specified, right? So here what we have the initialization part, then we have condition, and then what are the block of statement that needs to be executed multiple number of times, and then we have increment and decrement operator. Whatever you write within this scope, within this block of statements, it is within this while block. So here let me tell you, this would be my I. It starts with 0. My condition is I should be less than 10. So 10 times this loop will be executed. Let us see how it executes. So here the like suppose I am saying some statement needs to be printed hello or something like this, right? That is needs to be printed when the value of I is 0, right? Now you have incremented that value. Now you have taken that my value to be, my counter to be incremented. The first time it will be printed once, then again now my value would be 1, right? So 1 means when you increment this value it becomes 1. 1 means again 1 is less than 10. So again this line will be executed, right? Again next now you print that statement, again the hello will be printed on the screen. Again you increment the I operator and this would be your 2, and then again 2 is less than 10. So till 10 times this loop is going to be executed. Like at the last you have 10. So when you have 10, so 10 is less than 10, so this condition falls under false category. So now it is not going to be executed. So there are number of steps that are needs to be taken in mind while using while loop. The first is initialization, the second would be your condition, the third the block of statements, and then we have increment or decrement, right? So let us take one example. So the first example is write a program to print 10 natural numbers, right? Write a program to print 10 natural numbers. So here we have already defined like we need to print for 10 times. Our loop will be executed for 10 times. So here like whenever we are using the while loop, let us see. First of all you include the header file, then you have initialized the I value with 1. So your loop will be starting, your value will be starting with 1 till 10, and 10 is also included because here you have put I is less than and equal to 10. So it would be I should be less than equal to 10. So here you are going to print this statement. That means I, now my I is 1, now it becomes 2. So like this it is going to be incremented, and one by one all the values are printed till you receive the last value, that is I is less than equal to 10. So this is how, like, this would be my statement that is going to be printed the value of I 10 times. So 10 times this I will be printed on the screen, right? Let us take another example. Now suppose you have initialized the I with 1, and then you have taken one number, and then you have taken B, right? What is the program? It is basically print the table of any number you have taken the input from the user. So here you have initialized, because 5, you are not going to start with 0. So 5 is equal to 1. So this would be your 1. Then you have taken the number. Suppose I have taken the number as 5. Then till what number? That is 5 into 10. So 10 would be my last condition. So my loop will be executed for 10 times. So here what is the logic? Whatever number you are taking from the user, because this would be my number and this would be my I, right? Because it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and then 10. Then printf, you are getting the B part, and then I is equal to I plus 1. Each time when this statement will be printed and processed, then I will be incremented, right? So here one by one it is going to be incremented, like I is 5 into 1, 5 into 2, 5 into 3, 5 into 4 and so on. So this is how we use the while loop. Let us move to the do while loop. So do while loop is also used for iteration process, but it is a post tested loop. So somebody asks you, like, what is the difference between while and do while? So when we talk about while loops, they are pre tested loops. First the condition is checked and then we basically execute the loop, right? Whereas when we have post test loop, at least once this condition will be, this statements will be executed. Like you have the do syntax, then you have the line of code or your concept or your logic under this, then you put while statement and then you put the condition, and here only you are putting your increment or decrement part within the loop. So let us see the example first. You have included the header file. Now you have start the loop with I is equal to 1, then do, then print whatever you want to print, like you are printing the value of I here, then incrementing the loop, and then while you put the condition over here, right? That is I is less than equal to 10, and then one by one it is going to be executed, right? Let us take one more example. uh, Over here, like you are going to print the table of the number. So you might be using the same concept, like do take it as 1, I is equal to 1, and then do while till while is I is less than equal to 10, right? And in between you can write the logic. The logic would remain same like we have in our, this logic will be used in the do while part. Now let us move to the next part, that is for loop. So basically in for loop what we do is, it is a pre-tested loop, right? It is a pre-tested loop which is used for executing the statements, number of statements, right? But here what we have in a single go, in the single line, you will have all the three expressions, right? Like first we have the for keyword, then we have first part, that is initialization of I, then we have condition, and then we have increment or decrement, right? And here you will write the lines of code to be executed. Let us see the looping part. You have initialization, you have condition. If your condition turns to true, then number of statements will be executed, and it is keeps on incrementing till your condition becomes false. Once your condition becomes false, it is going to be moved to the next statement in the loop, right? Now let us move to the next point, that we have to print the natural numbers from 1 to 15. So here you are 1 to 15, you are printing the natural numbers. So here what you are going to do, this would be my first part, that is initialization. This is my condition and this is my increment and decrement, right? So here what we are going to do, we are just taking a print statement and we are printing the I part, right? We are printing the I. So here 1 till 15 it will be printed, because 15 is also included. You have used the condition, that is I is less than equal to 15. So yes, the 15 would also be included in this, right? Okay. So let me tell you one thing. When you have this parenthesis, when you have this curly braces basically. So curly braces, if you have single statement, it becomes optional when you have single statement in the for loop or in any loop also. If it is a single statement, no need to put it in within curly braces. But if you have more than one statement, if you have more than one statement, then it is necessary to put the statements within the curly braces, right? Now let us see some examples over here, like what we can use with the help of for loop. We can solve our programs. So like you are going to calculate the perimeter or an area of a land, right? This could be like without for loop you can also use it, but like when you have the things, when we you need the iteration, right, then it is necessary to use the for loop. Let us see one of the example, like using C compiler. Let us see uh, how to execute, how to use this looping concept. So suppose I am taking integer I, right, and then I'm going to take the for loop, and here what I'm going to do, I is initialized with 1, and I number of times of I, that is going to be condition will be I is less than equal to 10, and then increment of the I, that's what I told you. Suppose if there is a single statement within the for loop, no need to no need to put it within curly braces, right? Because if you are writing like this, dekho, now you can see the output, it like 10 times the output will be printed on the screen. Now suppose I want slash n before your starting of this, so here you will be having 10 times the hello will be printed. So like if there are two statements, and suppose I'm going to have some other statements over here which I want that is to be printed uh, inside the for loop, right? So here if I'm not going to put the curly braces, it is not going to be executed 10 times, right? It is going to be executed only one time, like at the end of the, after executing this statement 10 times, then only it is going to the next part, right? That is inside for loop. Now suppose I want this statement to be executed 10 times, both the statements, right? Both the statements needs to be executed 10 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put within the curly braces, right? Now if you see it is going to be executed for 10 times, the both the statements, your first statement that is hello world and your second statement that is inside for loop. And always remember, like when you go like out of the for loop, then you can write any statement over here, like suppose I am printing f, I am outside the for loop. So here you would be running this part. So once you execute all the things, then you will be getting outside the for loop, right? So here you have understood like how we use for loop, and suppose I want to use while loop over here only, I can use it. The only thing is both are same thing. I told you I is less than, suppose I want to execute for 5 time only, and my I is should be initialized with 1, because I told you you need to initialize the I before the start of that. So like it is also going to print the same thing, right? The only thing is the syntax is different in for loop and while, right? You have the same part. It is the first part is, always remember, first part of any loop is initialization. The second would be your condition. So I am putting within the this thing comments, and then you write the increment of the counter, right? So you now you increment the counter, that is I plus plus, right? So over here you have the first part initialization, then you have condition, and then after that you have increment operator, right? So over here you can say that like there are three parts of any loop. The first is initialization, the second would be your condition, and the last would be your increment or decrement operator. So that's what we have covered in this part. Like here, over here I have already shared this thing. Like whenever we start with any loop, we have the initialization part over here, right? Then we have condition, and then we have whatever logic we want to implement, we can implement it. And then very important part, the third step would be your increment and decrement, right? So these are the three parts of what, of the while loop, right? Of while loop. The same you may see in the for loop as well. Let me show you the for loop. In the for loop also, this would be my initialization, this would be my condition, and this would be my increment or decrement, right? So over here if you find it, this is like this would be my initialization, condition, and increment and decrement, right? So these are the three parts of my for loop. So you have three things in your for loop. The first part is initialization, the second part would be condition, and the third part would be your increment or decrement, right? So hope you have understood like how we use the looping concept in our C programming. The same statements would be taken, and where to you have to take the curly braces, and where you don't have to follow the curly braces, right? Because the only thing is, if you are putting within the curly braces, if you have multiple statements. But if you don't have multiple statements, no need to put it in curly braces. It is better to have within the single statement. So if you have single statement, that is different. If you have number of statements, then you need to put them between the curly braces, right? So here basically where we use this part, like sometimes it becomes expression 1, it could be optional, it could be like what is my first statement, first expression, it is my initialization part, right? I told you I is equal to 1, this would be my initialization, right? Then you have expression 2, that would be my condition. Very much required. It is very necessary to have this part in your looping concept. Why? Because if you don't have any condition, how you are going to execute your loop? The third would be your increment or decrement part. So these are the three steps for any loop. Like if you are using for loop, or either you are using for loop or while loop, or while do while loop, right? These three parts of the looping should be there in your program. Otherwise, it might be possible like it is going to give you an error, right? So hope you have understood all the loops, like how to use the for loop, how to use while loop, and how to use the do while loop. Hope you understood the session. Hope you like the session. Thank you.